Hale, I'm going to give you a guess. You get to guess. The TV in my office, I have something on that pertains to Carolina football. It's a game. What game do you think it is?
I'll go with the Tennessee game from a couple years ago, Williams-Brice, when Spencer Rattler threw, 5 touchdowns, whatever it was. That's my guess.
Yeah, that would have been a good one. I actually had that on a couple of weeks ago, but I have the Clemson-Carolina game on from November because after what happened last weekend in baseball, I thought, well, I need to redeem myself here. So there's 3 minutes left in the third quarter, and heartbreak is coming soon to the Tigers.
In the form of Lenore Sellers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's the quarterback.
Hamlin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just figured, look, people are down in the dumps. Just cut on the game from November and can't erase that. It's still there.
Yeah, just watch the fourth quarter. That's
all you need to see.
Where a lot of the action happened, right?
That's right. That's right. Real quick here on the softball note from the university. This is pretty cool. So for those that maybe have $20 to spare and would like to support the program via the Diamond Club, if you go to the softball page on GamecocksOnline.com and you donate $20 in the next 24 hours, well, through 9 a.m. tomorrow, there is, I don't know who it is, might be Hale for all we know, but somebody is going to match dollar for dollar every dollar. So if Hope donates $20, whoever this donor is going to give another $20, making it $40. This will all go towards the Diamond Club and helping undefeated 20-0 Gamecock softball. Well, Hale, you got a chance to look at the transfers yesterday. Based on what you saw, will South Carolina win the national championship?
I'm not going to go out on that limb.
Oh, man, come on. No. I teed you up. You had it right there.
No, I think there's way too much to have to replace on the defense, especially at tackle. And they've lost some really good linebackers and a really good safety. And, there are still concerns about the receiver core overall and running back, and the offensive line is still got some room to improve. So too many question marks for me to say all that. Sorry, everybody.
All right, man. Have a wonderful day. It's good to see you. We'll check in with you sometime in the next couple of years.
Later.
No, I'm just kidding. No, but honestly, this is a big moment for fans, right? Because none of these guys you recruit for 2 and 3 years anymore. You recruit them for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then they show up, and then nobody knows who they are, and then Demetrius Knight all of a sudden comes out of nowhere and has a hell of a season. So we don't know, you know what I mean? Like we don't know what any of these guys are going to really end up doing at South Carolina. But what type of impressions can you draw when you get a chance to actually spend time around this group?
Yeah, or in the case of Rasul Faison, they recruited him for about 2 days before he ended up visiting here and committing. Right. It's hard to say because you mentioned Demetrius Knight, and a year ago, I don't think anybody was anticipating the kind of season he had and doing what he did at the combine. I mean, I don't even think the coaching staff. I know the coaching staff wasn't expecting what Kyle Kennard did during the season. So it's the ultimate crapshoot, talent evaluation at any level, whether you're talking about the pro guys trying to figure out who they want to draft out of the college game, or college coaches trying to hit the portal, or recruit high school guys, or figuring out the right JUCOs to take. It's a roll of the dice every time. Some are a little more, for lack of a better word, risky than others. But just seeing all those guys up close and in person, many of them for the first time, there's some big dudes, big bodies, and that's not just the linemen and the linebackers. Cornerbacks are pretty big too. Brandon Cisse is a tall and well put together corner, and same with Miles Norwood. So it's an impressive looking group, and I guess that's to be expected when you're recruiting guys who've been in the college game for at least a year, sometimes, or some multiple years. So yes, it's a big physical looking group, and certainly excited to see them out on the field for the first time as Gamecocks here in a couple weeks when spring ball starts.
Yeah, I obviously we all are too. I think that what are they, Hale, about 8 or 9 days away from finally getting going. But
It's the 19th is the first day. So, well, I guess was that two
oh
weeks?
yeah, okay, yeah.
In a couple weeks.
So less than 2 weeks away. Okay, all right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we'll see what it all looks like and how it all unfolds. It's hard to project these things. Reading up a little bit on obviously the things that y'all write, you and JC and Alex and whomever, Whittle, et cetera, with the Big Spur, and then obviously tapping into, I would say some of my own sources and things like that. They seem to, they seem to have like kind of a guy that they go after in the portal, and you're not always going to get that guy, but it's almost like it makes you feel good to say this, I guess, but it's not true because everybody's trying to find dudes, as we all well know. But like some of these kids, like Nick Sharp, for instance, or Gabriel Brownlow Dindy, I believe I said that correctly, the defensive lineman from Texas A&M and others, line of scrimmage guys, where you have to win in this league. Like it's almost like they go out, you're going to miss on some of them, but some of the guys they find, you don't expect them once you kind of figure out their story and understand who they are and why they were signed. Like it's almost like you don't maybe expect some of those guys to be as good as you thought, because I think the general process of thinking is when you sign a player out of the portal, especially on the lines of scrimmage, you want to sign a guy who's some sort of superstar, who's done a bunch of stuff, and that's just not always the case. And these guys end up sneaking up on you and being pretty good. So when you got your eyes on the lines of scrimmage yesterday, those dudes, both sides of it, any additional takeaways, I would say, from physicality to maybe learning about some of their stories and why they're here and things like that, that you could maybe provide us with?
Not really. I didn't, thinking back, I didn't talk to any of the linemen. Alex and Whittle were there as well yesterday, so we kind of divided guys up and just got who we got. So it just so happened to work out that I didn't talk to any of those guys yesterday. But if you look at the offensive linemen, they're kind of similar in that they're at least a 1-year starter, guys who've played a lot, and they're all interior types of players, guards or center in the case of Boaz Stanley. I guess he did move over from tackle last year when he was at Troy. So with those guys, I think that's sort of the formula, and we saw it with the 2024 class, right? With the guys they brought in, Kamar Bell, Torricelli Simpkins. I think again doing the whole exercise of thinking back to last year at this time. When we're probably sitting here on the show, and I'm sure I'm almost positive I'm recalling this correctly, but there were people who were wondering if Torricelli Simpkins was the next Sidney Fugar, and the reason was like, he's coming from a lower level school. Well, if you just look at their bios and see, hey, one guy didn't really play for a bad Western Illinois team, and the other guy played a hell of a lot at North Carolina Central, which is a good program, and was an All-American at that level and did some good things. So, if anecdotally, like, that's cool and that worked out, who knows if it'll be the same thing with Nick Sharp and Boaz Stanley and Rodney Newsom, all of whom, again, like I said, have played and have experience. So, those types of things will certainly work themselves out, and who's to say they'll all three be starters this year? We don't know. That's those competitions will play out over the next few months. But I've been rambling, and JB, I don't even know if I've like addressed your question, so I'll just turn it back over to you.
Back to you, Tom. Yeah, I got to give my man John Strickland a bunch of credit on that, because he talked to Cedric last year when this kid committed, and told him, no, he's going to play at South Carolina. I straight up told them this guy is capable, and he was. We'll see what happens with him, by the way, with the draft coming up and all that type of stuff. Maybe he hears his name called. No, but that's the point we've been making. It's a very fair point. You just don't know. It's not like they've hit on every single guy that they've signed. Hale, they haven't, and you're never going to hit on every guy that you signed. It doesn't matter, certainly what position. But when the conversation comes up about who's gonna, you have all these off-season conversations, right? You hear them everywhere. Who's the most difficult guy to replace, and this, that, and the other. The way that I look at it, every year, if you have a dude on either line of scrimmage or both, and he's gone, that's the most difficult guy to replace. Because I don't know how you can have conversation after conversation after conversation in this league here, the SEC, about it being a line of scrimmage league. And if you don't have guys up there, you're not going to be any good. And we've seen that around here. And then turn around and say that when you lose a guy like an All-American, like a Kyle Kennard, for instance, and not say, well, he's going to be the most difficult guy to replace. I'm not trying to discount. Believe me, Nick Eamon-Warry's going well into the first round. Demetrius Knight, all these guys deserve all their credit. But like when you're going to replace guys who are hard to replace, you look in the SEC, you look at the lines of scrimmage, period, the end. There's nothing. That's where you start. And, for South Carolina, I think it's a little bit different, right, Hale? On the line, on the offensive side of the football, they've recruited remarkably well out of the high school ranks. It's their turn. And I know that they've signed transfer portal guys too. And that's part of my question, or part of this conversation. But on the defensive side, you brought Kyle Kennard in for 1 year. Now they've signed a kid out of Missouri. And then outside of Dylan Stewart, all these other guys, you've recruited them. Like, who steps up? I don't know, but it's the time to see the transfers too. And so it's always curious as to, is one of those guys going to take the job of one of these high school prospects or not? And that's why I was really focused on the lines of scrimmage and what those guys looked like yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, Jaylen Brown was a guy that they recruited out of high school, and he obviously signed with Missouri, and now they got him. So yeah. I would think he's probably out of the guys not named Brian Thomas, I think he's probably the most likely candidate, just in my opinion. I don't know if the coaches see it the same way, to challenge for that spot opposite of Dylan Stewart. I mean, I think Brian Thomas kind of has flown under the radar a little bit. I mean, and he played the third most snaps among all the defensive ends on the team last year.
Yeah.
And it was pretty good. I mean, I had some concerns about him coming into his college career of, his height and his arm length and, size, some of those measurables that we can get kind of too caught up in. When I say we, I mean the people who try to evaluate talent, me to a lesser extent, and again, like college coaches and pro scouts and all that, like those measurables are, they look at those for a reason, and they're important aspects of the whole deal. But I mean, when you see Brian Thomas Jr. play, he's playing incredibly hard, and he's tough, and he somehow just kind of ends up making plays when he's out there. He's pretty consistent with it too. So I think while getting Jaylen Brown in was a nice get, and they obviously have some other guys too, like Jatius Jeer and Desmond Umeazulu, who's a big year for him.
Yeah.
I'm just, again, like I think Brian Thomas is just kind of quietly under the radar, so to speak. And, I wouldn't be surprised if we look up by the end of this coming season and he's started most of the games, if not all of them, opposite Dylan Stewart. So, yeah, I mean, and again, like, he won't be the only one. We'll see Jaylen Brown play a lot. We'll see probably Jatius Jeer play a lot. We'll probably see Des U play a lot. I'm sure somebody else will have some snaps that is a significant contributor into the rotation. So yeah, I think just kind of my biggest thing with figuring out how to replace Kyle Kennard is like, hey, yeah, there's a guy who played behind him last year and played a lot and did some pretty good things as well as a sophomore too. Like he's still, you know, a relatively young guy. He's, you know, only entering his junior season.
Yeah, well, and they're going to play a bunch of guys. They've proven that. I mean, that's the system here. Stretching out to the second level of the defense, Justin Okoronkwo, the transfer from the University of Alabama by way of Germany, right? Germany? Wasn't he born in Germany? And Sean Murphy are essentially listed as clones by the university. 6'3", 230 pounders. So, Hale, you've been covering college football for a long time. You clearly understand the SEC and what a linebacker in this league generally speaking looks like. What do those guys look like?
I mean, it sort of depends on your scheme and who your coach is and what they look for. But I mean, clearly Clayton White has the type of guy that he's trying to get for the linebacker spot. And it's, you know, like you said, around 6'3", 230, somewhere in that range is the prototype. And it's not just those two transfers that you mentioned. It's almost all of those freshmen that are here right now as well. Whether it's Tayshawn Alston, AJ Holloway may not be as tall. Josh Smith is kind of close to it too. So yeah, that's Fred Johnson going back to last year's freshman class, who's probably going to play a ton this year. That's sort of how they see him, guys that are 6'3", 230, 240 pounds, somewhere in that range, and guys who can run and make plays, like Demetrius Knight, like we saw last year.
Yeah.
Debo Williams was a little shorter than that, and maybe not as fast and doesn't quite move as well laterally and in coverage and things of that nature. But yeah, it's with Clayton White and this South Carolina defense and how it's been constructed these last few years, that's what it's supposed to look like for those guys.
You can tell a lot sometimes. You mentioned Debo Williams. Sometimes you can tell a lot about who you're recruiting based on who their parents are. I had a chance to meet his mother in Orlando, Florida, and he quickly understood why they wanted Debo Williams. What a outstanding lady she is. So congratulations to the Williams family. Debo, I think, got hosed with the combine, but he's going to get picked up and hope he gets to stick around in the NFL for quite some time. On the linebacker position, let's talk about Sean Murphy, the kid who's come from Florida State by way of Alabama. For how much of his story do you know? I'm talking about from being recruited out of high school, what type of prospect that he was, and why he left the University of Alabama to go to Florida State, and then why he departed the Knowles program to come to Columbia.
Yeah, I mean, he was a pretty highly ranked guy coming out of high school. I can't remember exactly where he was, but he was heavily recruited. I mean, yesterday when I was talking to him, and he mentioned how he knew Shane Beamer from when he was a freshman in high school when Beamer was at Oklahoma. So that should kind of tell you all you need to know if Shane Beamer knew who he was, because Beamer recruited that Virginia, Maryland, DC, the DMV, that part of the country was one of his territories when he was an assistant at Oklahoma, and I believe he's from Manassas, Virginia. So he was a high level recruit coming out of high school, and obviously when you're a linebacker and Nick Saban signs you, like that's probably where I should have started. Like, say no more. So it's my understanding that he left Alabama after Nick Saban retired, because that's why he went there and wanted to play for Saban. Ended up at Florida State, and I think he was injured for the most part last season, so he didn't play a ton. And I think he just kind of wanted to hit reset again after being at Florida State. I mean, that was not a very good season at all for those guys. So I think he just wanted to get out and start fresh, and he ended up at South Carolina. Obviously, there's an opportunity for playing time for him. He felt like I said, he's known Beamer for a while, so he liked Beamer, got to know Clayton White, likes Clayton White in the system, and thinks it would be a good fit for him. And I think it'll be. I think he's going to have a good season. I mean, he's too talented to not come in and be a guy who can contribute and play a lot, and maybe even be a difference maker at some point.
Moving to the other side of the ball here, Hale, we've known, and if you watch college football, backup quarterback's an important spot to have a pretty good player at. And we've seen time and time again in this program over the years that those guys sometimes have to come in and win you a big ball game. Dylan Thompson and others certainly will obviously come to mind. And last year, Robbie Ashford, did everything he could to keep the ship floating when Lenoris went down. God forbid that happen again. Aaron Noland is now here in uniform at South Carolina. Did you get much of a chance to spend time with him? And what did you learn about him?
So Alex actually got with him. Sean Murphy was the first guy I talked to. So he was sitting at a table, and I was sitting there with him. Then Aaron Noland walks in and sits down behind him. And of course, there's like a herd of media who's coming from behind me to catch up with Aaron Noland, including a couple other folks who are sitting at my table. So I just stayed planted, and by the time I, even crossed my mind to get up, Alex was already over there talking to him, talking there. So Alex did post something on the site from that interview, and I would encourage people to go read that at the Big Spur. There's some good stuff on there from him, and the thing that's interesting to me that's obvious that maybe some people, I don't know, maybe people talk about it, but I kind of wonder about the whole him being left-handed, and Sellers is obviously right-handed. So how will that affect things within the team trying to install an offense and figure out positions? Because obviously when you're a right-handed quarterback, your blind side is on the left. So how does that affect things when you have Aaron Noland out there and you need to protect his blind side from the right tackle spot? And as far as like designing plays, I mean, I'm sure like Perry or Strick can come on here, and I'm not sure, I know they can come on here and tell me how important it is and how critical it can be to design plays for a right-handed quarterback. And if you want to get a guy rolling out to his right side, throwing a ball as a left-handed quarterback, that's going to be significantly different than it is for right-handed quarterback. So to me, those are just some kind of things that maybe we'll start to hear a little bit about from the coaching staff as we get into spring practice and maybe into preseason camp, is like, how does that, the difference in right-handed quarterback and a left-handed quarterback, how would that possibly affect things for the offense and how they try to put this whole thing together? Those are just some sort of things that I've kind of wondered about, and not that it's a bad thing. I mean, it's certainly not the first time in the history of football where there's been a starting quarterback who's a righty and a guy who's potentially the backup who's a lefty. So
right.
Those are just some, I don't want to say minor things, but some kind of things that are out there that I've kind of wondered about, and I'm anxious to hear what Mike Shula and Shane Beamer and even some of the players what they've got to say about it all.
Yeah, I'd be curious if they'll maybe do this like baseball. You like 2 minutes left in the fourth, they'll bring Nolan in. They'll bring in their closer, and they'll go from the righty to the lefty. See if you can't throw a couple breaking balls in the dirt and get. No, I'm just kidding. Rasul Faison, the tailback, which I guess maybe I probably should have done the math on it, but I didn't, and you did it for all of us, thankfully. He's 25 years old. 25 years old. A 25-year-old running back, which usually that's your third year in the NFL. But here he is still in college football. So what did you learn about him? I know that I did read in your, and I want people to go read the Big Spur, so I'm not trying to, discourage that at all. But I do know that you noted in there about, he said he thought he maybe knew where he wanted to go. And do you know where he wanted to go before he came to South Carolina? Did he say that?
I should have asked him that, but I didn't. I'm guessing it was either Alabama or North Carolina. He visited both those places, and I think he visited North Carolina right before he came down to Columbia for his visit here. So I would think it was one of those two.
Okay,
one of those two schools. But yeah, he's been around for a while. He's made a lot of stops. I mean, he didn't play. He graduated high school in 2018, and he didn't play in a college game till 2022, and that was in junior college. So he didn't play in a Division I college game until 2023. Just been around for a while and had whatever in life that's made it challenging for him to get to this point. A pretty good example of somebody who's persevered and fought for something that they want to accomplish. And yeah, I mean, I'll be the first to admit, like, hey, I kind of roll my eyes at seeing guys who are that age still playing college sports, and everybody's story is different. And for him, I think it's a little unique in that he, it's not like he redshirted and is taking advantage of the 2020 thing and bouncing around, just trying to level up and get to the highest level possible, and maybe sacrifice some things for his current team. Like, he's had to scratch and claw and fight for everything that he's gotten to and accomplished so far in his career. And I think we're just kind of starting to unpack his story a little bit and learn about him. And I hope that we can continue to hear from him and see what he's got to say about some of the things that have come through his life and been a part of his story. I think it's pretty interesting.
It seems like it's quite the story. How does he has 2 years, right?
No, he does not.
He's just got one. Okay.
That's my understanding. Yeah. I mean, he played the last 2 seasons at Utah State, and he had that season at I think it was Snow College in Utah before he transferred to Utah State. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, at the same time, even if he had to, the NFL isn't high on taking running backs who are 22 and 23, let alone 25. So,
Wow.
Hopefully he can have a nice year and get the interest of somebody and go on. But I am running backs when they transfer, like, they generally want to be the dude. Obviously Carolina had that situation last year when they signed Rocket. I am not, this isn't inside information, or I'm not like acting like I know more than somebody else. I don't know that he's going to be the dude at South Carolina. What I'm saying is I think that room actually isn't getting enough credit. I think they've got a pretty good room, Hale. And I think that, I don't know if it'll be by committee or not. I'm not so sure that that's the route that they really want to take. Maybe it is. Who knows? I guess they'll fight it out. We'll find out once we get to September, right? It's March. But at the same time, I'm just talking about from a transfer standpoint, all the guys that are there are pretty talented. They've either been recruited or brought in, and it's kind of their turn, and he elected to come be a part of that group. So personally, I think it says a lot about him. But also, as far as the entire running back room, I think it just makes it one of the more important storylines, if you will, over the next 6 months to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I was saying the same thing, I guess 2 months ago, whenever it was he signed, when Faison said he was coming to South Carolina, a lot of people at that time were just assuming he was going to be the guy, and maybe he will. But like you said, JB, I could see this being maybe, for lack of a better phrase, a running back by committee, because I just don't know that there's like a guy who's necessarily head and shoulders above the rest, like Rocket was last year.
Yeah.
Again, maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe Faison comes in and commands the bulk of the carries, but
he might.
But if you compare his 2 seasons at Utah State to the final 2 seasons that Oscar Attaway had at North Texas, the numbers aren't too different. They're pretty similar. So yeah, I could see those 2 guys kind of being the 1A and 1B as we get going. But I don't think Jawarn Howell is too far removed from that. Like,
no,
there might be a 1A, 1B, and a 1C. Like there's the staff still really likes Matthew Fuller.
Absolutely.
As well. So I think that's, again, like you said, JB, I think that's going to be one of the more intriguing position battles, because I think it's at least from the way I see it and from what I've kind of heard a little bit behind the scenes, I think it's closer than what some people might have assumed a couple months ago when they saw who was recruiting Rasul Faison and where he was ranked in the transfer rankings and all that.
Yeah,
there's a little more to it than that.
There's no question, and they're all big, 220, 225-pound tailbacks, and in today's world, you got to have that. Do you want to stick around for just a couple more minutes and dip into some high school recruiting with us, or you got to run?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, I tell you what, let's hit a quick timeout, Phil. We'll squeeze in a quick one here. We won't keep you very long because we're getting short on time, but I certainly want to get a couple of thoughts on some of these 26 guys. So hang tight. Hale McGranahan with the Big Spur. We are powered by our great dear friends at Electric Bikes of Charleston. You're going to be outside on Saturday, I guarantee it, because it's going to be 77 and sunny, and you're going to be wishing you had something to do other than actually walking. Who wants to walk or jog? And none of us want to do that. We want the EBs, right? Bam. Electric Bikes of Charleston, electricbikescharleston.com. You can buy from anywhere in the state. People come from everywhere to see our friends at Electric Bikes of Charleston. Our friend Hale will be right back on the other side of this quick break. Your next crack at Williams-Brice is next month, the spring game right around the corner. Real quick here, it is – hold on, Hale. We got to go to the scoreboard, the Hale McGranahan Chief scoreboard. Vanderbilt is up on Tennessee with 2:12 to go in the second quarter in the SEC women's basketball tournament, 34-32. And the winner of this ball game will get the Gamecocks tomorrow at noon in the quarterfinals of the women's tournament up in Greenville, in Mad Dog's neck of the woods. So keep an eye on that one as they continue to play that out. Georgia, Oklahoma coming up next, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and then tonight Bama and Florida, the top 4 seeds await. In addition to the Gamecocks, Kentucky, the 4 seed, Texas, the 2 seed, and LSU is the 3 seed. Anybody wondering, the men are the 16 seed. But I think we already knew that. Hale, if you're a recruiting nut, now is a good time to head to the Big Spur. You've got a column up that you put out yesterday about the Carolina commitments and prospects and where they are, and some of them are rising significantly in the 24/7 rankings. Let's talk about Jazavian Currents, who is planning to come to South Carolina. He is committed out of Rock Thrill, South Point High School. A big jump in the latest 247 spots.
Yeah, he's the number 1 ranked prospect in the state of South Carolina. Safety, a big safety, like 6'2", 6'3", around 200 pounds. There was a time when some people were like convinced that he was going to outgrow the position and be a linebacker and all that. And that will not be the case. He's going to play a DB He's already taller and bigger than his dad, who's you know, I don't. You mentioned like the parent, like looking at meeting Debo's mom and seeing kind of how he's sort of built, maybe mentally, internally, and all that type of stuff. Like you can also look at the parents and see how a guy is going to develop physically. And I don't think Jazavian is going to get much bigger than where he's at right now. He's already a pretty big dude, but he's a versatile player at South Point. I mean, he plays quarterback, receiver, plays all over on defense. He's going to be a safety or a nickel probably at Carolina. Maybe sort of similar in some ways to Nick Eman, probably not the same explosive type of athlete, probably not as twitchy like we saw Nick at the combine last week, but maybe similar in that he's going to be a bigger guy and can probably add a little bit of versatility in the secondary. Really good player. One of my favorite football players for the South Carolina's recruiting. And when I say football player, I mean a guy who's just gonna he'll go out there and play wherever and be really good at it.
Yeah, a football player. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. Look, man, kids out of Rock Hill generally turn out all right. Way more times than not, especially NFL looking safeties like that. Carolina's, they got one in the draft, right? Another guy from the state of South Carolina. His name's Nick Eman, for anybody that was wondering. Really interesting note here on a local kid from Dutch Fork, a big one. And maybe, I know, again, a lot of our audience, they're recruiting gurus, and a lot of them just follow it fringely, and some of them don't really care until they become Gamecocks or don't care at all. So those who are not the gurus might not necessarily know or maybe have just heard of the name of Julian Walker. He is 6'6", 230 pounds, and he is out of Dutch Fork. And apparently he's caught the eye of those that put the numbers next to his name with 24/7 Sports.
Yeah, it'd be a shame if people are just not hearing about him, because we've been writing about him on the Big Spur since December when I got to see him at the state championship game. And he's interesting in that his dad Jamil is on the strength staff under Ryan Day. He's one of the assistants, and he's been on the staff since 2023. And Julian's been around the program since then. I think it was at maybe at the spring game of 2023. I can't remember exactly when I first saw him, but when I saw him, I see this tall dude, and I was like, God, is this guy a recruit? Is he helping out with the strength staff? Because he's always kind of around the strength coaches, and I didn't know who he was at first, and just like, man, who is this guy? And come to find out, he's Jamil Walker's son, and he's still in high school. I'm like, okay, I wonder if he's any good. Well, I couldn't figure that out because he wasn't putting anything online, no highlights, no stats. I didn't get a chance to go see him play until that state championship game in December. So still to that point, I didn't know if he was just a big, good-looking high school football player or a guy who's like a legit college prospect. And he is a legit college prospect. So he had a couple sacks against Summerville in that state championship game. And, come to find out, South Carolina had offered him, I think, that previous summer, and really was just very, very under the radar to that point. And again, like if you're not putting anything out about yourself online, it can be challenging for college coaches to know who you are.
Right.
So, Julian finally put out some highlights. I guess it was in January, and he's close to 20 offers now. I mean, Southern Cal has offered, Missouri, Michigan, a bunch of power conference schools are now firmly in the mix for him, or trying to get in the mix for him. I mean, again, he's been around Carolina a lot. Is close with a lot of the players. I mean, half the offensive line room was sitting in the stands at South Carolina State for that game. Nick Harbor was with them, and they're there to watch Julian because he's he's got relationships with those guys, and they, you know, get along great with his dad too, I would imagine. So
Yeah.
So yeah, he's a legit player, man. And I think I said on the show before when I was on talking about him, like I was not going to let our rankings and ratings folks at 24/7 not know about this guy. I did everything I could to, and I'm not trying to like pat myself on the back by saying this, but like we needed to get him ranked and rated, and I'm happy that they've got him as a 4-star, because I think he's really good and very deserving of that type of a rating, and I think he'll continue to ascend in the rankings and ratings, because he's only going to get better. Apparently he's worked extremely hard to improve himself as a player, and I can't imagine that's going to be any different moving forward, especially when your dad is a strength and conditioning coach in the SEC for an SEC football team.
I remember when he came over here, no one even knew about it. Matter of fact, I think we were the first ones to talk about it, and he just kind of snuck on over that summer. And all of a sudden, we were getting questions. Well, wait, who's this? Oh, he was at Arkansas. Like, yeah, we've been telling you. You should pat yourself on the back, though, not to make this about you. And I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to embarrass you or make you blush or anything either. But that's the point of the rankings, for people who know what they're looking at, to make sure that other people know who these guys are. I mean, you know, it doesn't do them a lot of good if there's a dude who's very talented and worthy of the purpose of these things, and he's not there. So I applaud you for making the effort to make sure that people know about Julian Walker. And you know, if South Carolina doesn't get him in the boat, then they have really failed miserably as a staff, because he's right down the street and they signed the checks of his father. So I hopefully Jamil Walker doesn't have a roaming eye. Hopefully he wants to stay in Columbia, number one. And number two, I'm pretty sure, based on what I've heard about this strength staff with Coach Day and Jamil Walker and the others, it's pretty darn good. These guys have an idea of what the hell they're doing. So this seems like a good spot for South Carolina to land this kid. He's up to number 149. Hale, do you think he'll go even higher than that? He's still got to play a football season. It's March. Do you anticipate that number moving up once people actually get their eyeballs on him?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do. There's no doubt about it. And I don't know where he's at exactly, height and weight. I mean, we got him at 6'6", 230, like you said, on 24/7. I don't know if he's a little heavier than that 230. He could be. And I don't know if he's right at 6'6", but he's not far off if he's not 6'6". I mean, he looks the part. If anybody, saw him walking down the street, you'd be like, oh, he's already on the football team. He must be he must be a Gamecock defensive end. Now he's still a junior at Dutch Fork. he's a big dude. Speaking of guys who are already like taller than their dad and way bigger than their parents, like with Xavier Currents, Julian Walker is as well. Jamil was a running back, I believe, at Wisconsin. So, not 6'6". He's unfortunately for some of us, myself being one of them, we all don't get to be taller than our parents by a significant amount, like those guys.
I wasn't blessed with that. All right, based on the new rankings as well, 5. I think, Hale, you tell me if I'm wrong here, but I've got 5. And again, people, you can read this stuff and even more and look at all these prospects. Go read this article on the Big Spur. It's very well put together, naturally, because it came from Hale. But I think there's 5 guys here inside the top 50. Is that right? That have all seemingly moved up in their rankings. If that is correct, quickly, those guys and South Carolina's chance to land any of them.
Yeah.
You want me to name them, or do you want?
So Darius Gray, Landon Duckworth.
Yeah.
Obviously Currents, Walker. Well, you said top 50.
50. Rodney Dunham.
Yeah, Dunham. I think Dunham dropped a few spots, but he's still like top 15.
15.
Yeah.
Aiden Harris.
Aiden Harris, yeah. So Dunham's visited a ton. We've talked about him a little bit. He's been to South Carolina more than he has any other school. Tennessee's been a factor. Duke has been a factor as well. I think he's planning to get out and see some other places this spring, like Georgia and Notre Dame. So yeah, like I've got a crystal ball in for him, but there's some pretty stiff competition, which to be expected for a top 15 recruit who plays defensive end. Like there's always going to be people coming after those guys pretty aggressively.
Hey, real quick, if that worked out, Dunham and Walker in the same class, how would you classify that group of ends together?
Spectacular.
Yeah. Elite, whatever big word you can come up with, right?
Yeah, like say something nice about them. Like that'll work. Yeah. And really fit the profile to what South Carolina is looking for at that position. Like guys who are taller, long arms, bigger bodies. That's been a priority for this staff at defensive end and tackle too, for that matter. But yeah, so Aiden Harris, who's kind of emerged within the last couple months as a target. He's a defensive tackle. He's got a twin brother, Andrew, who's not as highly rated, but South Carolina's still going after him as well. Landon Duckworth, who was committed to Carolina at one point and then decommitted. And, the Gamecocks have been a factor for him all along since then. So that they need to get him back on campus sooner than later. That could happen at some point this spring. I've already forgotten those other guys that were
Corey Adams out of Towson, Maryland.
Oh yeah. So Adams was supposed to come down, 4-star cornerback, supposed to come down for that underclassman day in January that got canceled because of the winter weather.
Yep.
He's scheduled for an official visit, but he's got, again, if you're a top player in the country, you're going to have a lot of folks coming after you, and he's got a lot of folks coming after him, like Michigan, Oregon, people like that. So significant competition that way for him as well.
But all these, they're in it for all these guys is the point. This is not like they're just tossing. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah. That's why I put them in the story. I'm not just like picking out guys sporadically. I mean,
just because they have an offer, right?
Yeah. Just because they have an offer. They're like, for the most part, I try to include guys who have visited at some point, and Adams has not. Again, he was going to, but he's got the official schedule, so I included him in that, and he's probably in that tier of guys who's probably like less likely for South Carolina. I would say that, but again, a lot of those guys who are in that story that we're talking about are, South Carolina's got a great shot at getting them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is, look, Hale. It's not Friday. Generally on Friday, we want to boost everybody up and get them rolling into the weekend and stuff like that. It's only Thursday, but we can start it a little early. This is, with the Gamecocks played well. They finished 9-4. Of course, we know all that stuff. And you pair that with the type of prospects in this. JC says it all the time. He's here. You probably noticed his haircut. When the state of South Carolina has a great group of players and the Gamecocks hit on those guys, and it seems like they're trending towards hitting on most of the ones that they want in South Carolina, good things start to happen around here. And then you pair that with all these other guys from North Carolina and Alabama and Maryland and et cetera, Virginia. We could be looking at something pretty unique if the Gamecocks end up having another pretty good season and keep the train on the tracks. So this could be something special. Don't want to get too far ahead, but certainly it's looking pretty good. It's looking better than not, that's for sure.
Yeah, it always helps when you close the season strong and
win games, man.
You win a bunch of games and you have a quarterback that people know he's really good. There are a lot of parallels to that end of that 2022 season to the end of this past season. So I guess the one parallel that I'm sure everybody wants to not be a parallel is what happens in the following years. So that'll be important for Carolina to not have another 5-7. I guess I should probably get real quiet. I want to say that because people get mad.
I said we were getting people jacked up for the weekend. Hale, not dumping water on them. That's JC's job.
That's why I'm getting quiet. I don't think that'll be the case. I certainly didn't think it was going to be the case in 2023. But there's a lot to be excited about with this program right now, and certainly 2026 recruiting.
This perfect timing. It coincides with Sellers. He just crossed the end zone. He just crossed the goal line. The Gamecocks just took the lead.
Spun the football
from November. Yeah. 9 plays, 75 yards, 401. JC, I've got the Clemson-Carolina game on from November. I figured, after what happened last weekend in baseball, this you can't erase this as long as you got DVRs there. So might as well.
Are you playing "Shiny Happy People" by REM?
Yeah. No, I don't listen to REM. No, it's just their church.
Well, God, it's the end of the world as we know it.
Yeah. No, I don't see it. You're the cold water guy, though. I don't do that.
Nah. By the way, Hale, I put a little teaser for your segment up on Instagram today, and I put a Fish song in there. Because you can put music on Instagram. Mm-hmm. So I did it for you, dude.
Which song?
I don't. This is how much I know about Fish, but I'll tell you shortly. I googled top Fish songs, and there was one that they just did that Instagram did. Okay, I'll tell you. It's
bouncing around the room.
That's what I was gonna say. Bouncing around.
It's called Free.
Oh,
Free. Okay. See, that's a good one. That's a song that'll get people going into the weekend.
Yeah. I guess I'm
do it.
Learning
Might
a lot
change your
about
weekend plans.
Yeah. So anyway, just wanted to let you know that, dude. I was like, promoting Hale. Let's use a Fish song, So
yeah. Well, Hale deserves. He tried to not take credit, and he won't do it again because he's a humble dude. But he does deserve. That's what JC. I told him. I said you deserve credit for getting the eyeballs on the Walker kid. Don't not pat yourself on the back. It's part of the business, right? If you're good, we need to know about it. So good job, Hale.
Yeah, Hale will. If that kid ends up being really good, he'll own bragging rights on that one for a long time.
Oh yeah, that's right. And Hale, who knows? Might deserve some NIL dollars off that deal. We'll have to see what happens.
Well, you don't have to be a football savant to see a 6'6", 230-pound defensive end and think, oh, that guy's pretty good, especially when he has a couple sacks in the state championship game.
Well, apparently you do. If you're the only one that was, doing this, apparently you do.
I guess so. Yeah. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
you're awesome, dude.
Yeah, it's always good to see. I had plans to keep you for like 25 to 30 minutes, not an hour, but I am glad we did that. That's for sure. More Hale is better Hale.